So, as I said, very warm welcome to all of you. Let's get cracking with today's session. So, there are multiple things we want to discuss. First of all, just a quick word about the platform. So, we're using Adobe. Adobe is a reasonably good platform. It should work for us. The controls, some of you have already seen them, microphone controls on the top, speaker controls on the left-hand side. If you have multiple microphones or multiple speakers or headsets, that's the place where you go to select the correct one. Now, you have access to the same controls that I do. So on the left-hand side of your screen, this is the most important one. You should see a marker icon. The second icon, it should look like a marker. I'd like you guys to select that and just point to something or circle something on the screen so that you can see how it works. When we're solving questions, you will probably be using that to draw my attention to certain parts of the question. All right, so somebody circled platform, somebody's drawn what looks like a circle on the left-hand side. Somebody's put a dot over there. Perfect. All right, so we've got this working as well. I think that's great. Abhishek's rejoined. Abhishek, are you able to see the screen now? Abhishek, you'll have to unmute yourself. So you're on mute right now. Hello, Abhishek. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right. So for now, if you can mute your microphone, that'll be great. All right, guys. So that's about the platform. It's very straightforward. And now let's move on to introductions. So a very quick word about what we're trying to do over here. Some of you already know this. I've discussed this with you. So we're trying to put together a set of, easily available recorded videos for people. And we're in the very early stages of testing that right now. So some of what you see today may be a little rough. I'd ask you to just bear with me over there. But otherwise, in terms of the breadth of coverage, I think we should be good. Now, a little bit of information about you as well. That'll be great if everyone can share a little bit. From my side, I'd like to hear you say your name, your target GMAT date. I think that's a very important piece of information. So when are you planning to take the GMAT, right? So if you could just introduce yourself and give us your target GMAT date, that'll be absolutely great. And if you can add anything to that, that'll be appreciated as well. We will go in the same order that we see on the screen. So Abhishek, we'll start with you, followed by Ankit. Abhishek, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I am Abhishek Upadhyay. Uh, I have appeared for GMAT. I have appeared twice in GMAT, and I scored V21 and V28. So I want to improve my verbal, and I am planning to appear again in a month, maybe in the first week of October.
Got it. October. Ankit, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Ankit Bagla.
I'm sorry.
I've
Abhishek,
given
can you just mute your microphone? Yeah,
I've
Ankit, please go.
given GMAT one time in just on 2nd of August, and I've scored 650, and with a breakup of Q50 and V26. So I'm quite lacking in verbal, and Ajitesh is here to help me out. And my tag and my second I would be giving my second GMAT was probably in the month of September. That is in the third week. So yeah, that's all.
Got it. So mid to end September.
Yeah.
Excellent. Manu, please go ahead.
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm Manu. I am looking at taking the GMAT around the end of October. Basically, looking at R2, round two of deadlines for the Indian B schools. Um I, I've, I'm based out of Bangalore, and I work for Morgan Stanley's due diligence team. That's about me. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Rahul?
Hi, I'm Rahul. I'm from New Delhi, and I already gave my GMAT once and found that I'm severely lacking in SC and its accuracy. So my consistency is pretty low. So that's what I'm here to improve on. Thank you.
Awesome. And do you have a target date for your GMAT? Like when
Yes, it's
you
it's around September end or October
September
1st.
end?
Yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Sharanya?
Hi, I'm Sharanya. I'm a doctor and I right now work with a firm which deals with sports nutrition. And I am planning on doing a dual degree with an MPH and MBA. So I don't have a due date for my GMAT exam as of now. As of now, I'm just looking at getting all my concepts in place. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. Thank you. Ajali?
Hi, my name is Ujali Verma. I am looking at taking the GMAT somewhere around end of October or early November. I haven't taken the exam till now, so this will be my first attempt and hopefully the last. Uh, I work for the World Bank. I'm usually based out of Nairobi, but elections are on in Kenya, so I'm back in India for a bit right now. Very nice to meet you all.
Understood. I see that. So thank you, Ajali. And I see that a lot of you are taking the GMAT at around the same time, which is great. So apart from whatever we do in our classes, I really want you guys to learn from each other as well. And not just learn from each other, but push each other. So I think that's one of the best things about studying in a group. You can see what other people are doing, how much effort they're putting in. And it just kind of drives you, um, to do more than what you would normally do on your own. All right. I see that Manu has a question. Manu, please go ahead.
Yeah, Ajitesh, just like for the benefit of all of us, I think you've got a verbal score which is unheard of. Can you just tell us how you got it?
So it's not unheard of. It's a good score. But so how did I get it? So I think it started with my prep for the IIM CAT. So I took the IIM CAT exam. Some of you might have taken this, or you may have heard about it. I think that's where I really started preparing. So a lot of that carried over to the GMAT. So the first time I took the GMAT, it was with pretty much zero prep. I just read some math formulae and I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning reading some math formulae. Took the exam at 8 o'clock in the morning. I got a 760 with a V44 and a Q49. So that was my cold score, or let's say my baseline score. After that, I put a lot of effort into grammar and logic. So these are the two things that I really focused on. And I took the GMAT again, and that's where you see my current score, my 780 with a Q50 and a V51. It's not the V51 itself that's really that important. So, so the thing is, V51s are pretty much important only for GMAT instructors. They're not really important for you guys. So you can get a score of 780 with a verbal score much lower than V51. The thing that I would like you to keep in mind about my score is not the 51. It's the fact. So at that time, the GMAT used to be like 75 minutes per section. So it's the fact that I finished the section in 55 minutes. That's what I want you to keep in mind. So once I really got the concepts down, it just became like really, let's say, it was like, yeah, I'd already seen all of this before, right? And I'm just executing the same patterns that I'm already familiar with. So that's what I want for you guys as well. I want you to be comfortable with the concepts, and I want you to be comfortable applying them confidently so that you can save time. And that's why SC is so important. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Madhu, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We're hoping we
Awesome.
get somewhere similar to what you've got.
I am absolutely going to work my ass off to make sure that that happens for you guys as well. All right. Now, very quickly, let's discuss what you guys can expect from our classes. First of all, these will be very comprehensive theory sessions. So some of you might already know this, we don't do any kind of tips or tricks. We focus only on understanding. That's what we're going to be spending all our time on in these sessions. Now, I expect these sessions to take 4 to 5 weeks, right? So when I tried kind of saying all the content that I've created out, it took me a lot of time, but this is the first time I'm trying this in a class environment. I will try to tighten it for you guys because I understand that all of you are busy professionals. You have other commitments. I will try to bring that time down because SC is just one of the things that you guys will be working on. Now, another thing you can expect in our classes is original questions. I really don't want to give you GMAT questions. GMAT questions are best practiced by you at home because these are very high quality questions. We don't want to waste them. And we definitely do not want to use your GMAT prep questions because if we use your GMAT prep questions, then when you take those exams, your score will not be that reliable. The next thing is now, during the session, you guys are welcome to ask your questions. I see that some of you have already started becoming comfortable with that because you found the raise hand feature. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. But sometimes, during a session, maybe, your question is not quite clear in your mind, or for whatever reason, you don't ask it, right? I will be staying back after the class. So, there is a period of time where we can really lock a concept in and get our understanding there. So I will be staying back after the class. If anybody has any questions about what we just discussed, or maybe you have some new questions which did not occur to you earlier, please feel free to ask immediately after the session. So you're not forced to stay back. You can go on, get going with your day. But if you have questions, you have the opportunity to stay back. And the next point is very simple. Please feel free to ask questions. The next point is important for me, so I'll just spend 10-20 seconds on it. Please share your feedback, especially regarding the speed at which we're going, the comprehensiveness with which we cover the content that we're doing. Right? So these are very important for me. And anything that you feel would better help you reach your target, right? Please share that with me. You can share it privately, you can share it publicly, but please share it. And finally, so all of these sessions are being recorded. I hope everyone's okay with that. These sessions will be shared with you by end of day. We're trying to automate the process. So for the first day, that's today, it may not happen very quickly. It might take a little bit of time, so bear with us. But afterwards, it should become a lot faster, a lot more regular. But yes, all the recordings will be shared with you. Now, apart from the theory sessions, we will also set up regular doubt clearing slots. So I'm fully aware that you guys will be practicing a lot of material on your own. Support will be there for you when it comes to material outside our theory sessions as well. Now, all of this support for your doubts will continue till the end of December. So I know that we are targeting 4 to 5 weeks for the theory sessions, right? So that we end in time for most of your GMAT dates. But just in case you need doubt clearing beyond that, please note, this is committed from our side that we will be there till at least mid-December. And just personally from my side, I absolutely want to see you guys do well. This is something that I'm going to put a lot of my time and energy towards. I think all of you already have my phone number. Please remember, anything you want to ask, don't think, just ask. For any reason, if you feel that I'm busy or something, just send your message on WhatsApp and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Abhishek, I see you've raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Sir, I am getting disturbance in voice, sir.
You're getting disturbance in the voice. Just mute your microphone. Guys, just a quick check with all of you. If you could just type in, if you could just type in clear or audio distorted or anything. Just write clear or distorted. Okay, so Abhishek, this may be something to do with the connection between your internet provider and Adobe. We'll probably have to troubleshoot this a little later. But just a quick question. Are you able to understand what I'm saying, or is it completely distorted?
No, sir, now it's clear, sir.
Oh, now it's clear? Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yes.
Excellent. All right. All right, guys. Now, let's get going with the real meat of what we have to do. First of all, let's understand what the GMAT wants to test. The GMAT is an exam. The GMAT as an exam wants to test your logical abilities. This is very important. It does not want to test your knowledge of grammar. It does not want to test your knowledge of mathematical formulae. It wants to test your logical abilities, more specifically, your higher order reasoning skills. Now, to do that, it has these different things. It has sentence correction, it has RC, it has CR, it has quant, right? So these are just different things that are used to test the same basic thing, your reasoning ability. Now, within that, what is the sentence correction question type test? The sentence correction type also tests the same thing. Sometimes while solving a sentence correction question, you might have got the feeling that, yeah, they're kind of testing my logical ability, right? But to do that, it also uses English, right? And in fact, everything on the GMAT is in English. So sometimes you are going to notice that there will be things that are not really explainable, as in we'll just have to memorize them, right? We might not even know how they work, but we'll have to know them. So this is something we should set the expectations on as early as possible, that although SC is also about logic, there are certain things involved that absolutely just have to be memorized. Now, what is different about SC? SC is the only question type in verbal. Remember, in verbal. In quant, everything is packed with concepts, right? Now, you may or may not find those concepts easy, difficult, I don't know. But SC is the only question type in verbal that is highly dependent on concepts. So in terms of visualizing it, it looks like this. SC is maxed out on concepts. CR is kind of there. There are a few concepts, right? And RC is pretty much no concepts. So that's the way you should visualize it. SC, massive when it comes to concepts. Now, what does this mean for you? It means that this is the easiest part of the GMAT verbal section for you to improve. Why? Because although it takes effort to learn these concepts, once you know them, things just become easier. Some of you have taken the GMAT before. You may have found that solving SE questions you can be really fast at SE questions, right? This is why, because of the concepts. Once you apply them, you'll be eliminating options, maybe left with one or two options, and you finally have to choose. All of that happens very fast in SC. So we'll discuss this a little bit later, but our average time for SC is something like 60 to 80 seconds. To give you a little more perspective on this, your average time in verbal is 1 minute 48 seconds. That's your verbal. In SC, we target 60 to 80 seconds. And I have seen performances from students who've got 100 or close to 100% accuracy in SC with total verbal scores of above V44. So I'm talking about V45, V46 kind of scores. And SC average times of around 40 to 50 seconds. That is how much I've seen people push this. That's what's possible. So that is why SC is such a huge opportunity. If you can get SC down, then what you can do is you can create a little bit of buffer for yourself when it comes to other weak areas like CR or RC, and create time for yourself. Like if you have a long passage, where do you get the time to read that passage? From SC. Now, let's talk about a right or wrong approach to SC. Some people follow, just a very sound-based approach. I'm not going to say that that's wrong. It's possible. Some people do that and they do well. It's just less reliable. So when we say that we follow a very concept-driven approach, the reason for that is we want ourselves to be able to reliably solve questions. That's important for us. Okay, so let's carry on. Format of SE questions. I think all of you are familiar with this. This is not something I'm going to spend too much time on. We know that there's always one sentence, never more than one sentence. Either part of that sentence will be underlined, or sometimes the full sentence will be underlined. Now, over here, there are 2 points that I want to quickly discuss. The first one is the importance of the underlined portion. Now, the underlined portion is, of course, in the 5 options, right? You have to choose which option to put in the underlined portion. But the importance of the underlined portion should not be, let's say, overemphasized. So let me be very clear. The problem that I see with a lot of people is they hyper focus on the 5 options, and that's all they're reading. They're not doing anything else. But when you go back to the non-underlined portion, right, if you try to read the non-underlined portion, you immediately see, oh, what? I was struggling between these 2 options, but actually it's very easy, right? So I really want you guys to keep this in mind from the beginning. The entire sentence needs to be read, including the non-underlined portion. Please don't ever get into a situation where you're so focused on the underlined part that you're missing out on whatever clues the GMAT has left for you. And the next point is the importance of option A, the first option. Now, some people think that option A, for some reason, sets the meaning and you have to follow this meaning. I just want to quickly check. Has anybody heard this piece of advice? Option A is the right meaning. Okay, Sharnya's not come across this. Ujali's not. Manu's seen it sometimes. Ankit's also saying sometimes. So this is something that, we come across. We see some people saying it. Other times, it's like it's like a toss of the coin. We may or may not have come across this. In case you haven't come across it, that's great, because this is not true, right? Now, option A is just like any other option. And the GMAT, and when I say the GMAT, I mean the GMAC, right? The top people at the psychometrics team of the GMAT. They've told us that every option needs to have as close to a 20% probability of being correct as possible. This is something they're very careful about. So take it from me, no option is ever given any kind of inherent advantage. And the way I like you guys to think about this is, if option A always had the right meaning, right? Would there be any point at all in testing meaning? That is the question I want you guys to always ask yourselves whenever somebody tells you that option A gives you the right meaning. There would be no point testing meaning if you were already sure that option A had the right meaning. All right. Now let's come to the last point over here, diff the options. Diff the options just means actively look for differences in your options. These differences are going to help you get an idea about what the question may be testing. So remember, reading each option left to right is okay. I'm not going to stop you from that. But never ever forget to look for these differences. The differences could point you in the right direction. Now, very quickly, let's talk about timing. We know that SC questions are generally shorter. Some of them can be really long, right? Like some of them are like 50 plus words fully underlined. Now, if you can imagine what 50 plus words fully underlined is, 5 options, all of them 50 plus words, you're basically looking at an RC passage, like a short to medium RC passage. But although that can happen, I don't want you to go by that. This is quite rare that you will see such a long SC question. In most cases, you're looking at a relatively short piece of text. And we aim for 60 to 80 seconds on average on that question. Now, if you get a long question, can you push beyond 60 to 80 seconds? Absolutely, because we're only talking averages here. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. This is a very important point for me. That's why I'm just going to pause and ask you guys, any concerns about targeting 60 to 80 seconds as the average for SC? Please feel free to unmute yourselves and let me know. If you go ahead, Ankit.
Hello.
Yeah, Ankit.
Yeah, actually, one problem I think so it is comprehending the meaning or the the underlying portion. I generally take a lot of time comprehending that. So the time for uh, uh, let's say for 60 to 80 seconds seem little bit unreasonable for me, because comprehending that exact non-underlined plus underlined portion, it takes somewhat around 20-30 seconds for me.
I
So
understand.
for evaluating the other options, for say 5 options, we have to evaluate and pick the best out of them. So it generally takes a little bit longer time.
Got it. Manu, I see that you raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had a similar point to Ankit's point. So in short sentences, it's fine. I think it should be okay, 60 to 80 seconds. But I think in long sentences, where you're trying to understand the meaning and then see the underlying part, like long sentences, I mean about like 6 to 7 lines probably. So in those cases, I think 60 to 80 seconds could be a fight.
Right. So I fully agree with both of you. In certain questions, 60 to 80 seconds is just asking for trouble, right? There's no other way to put it. If you aim for 60 to 80 seconds on a 50-word question, right? Ouch. I can only imagine what's going to happen. So I fully agree with that part, right? Now, 60 to 80 seconds on average, in terms of comprehension, right? I agree that it can be a challenge. And an important point that Ankit brought up is that understanding, right? Understanding the meaning of the sentence. And meaning is important. We'll come to that during the session. Understanding the meaning of the sentence also takes time. But Ankit and Manu and everyone in the class, my question to you is this. Your average time is 1 minute 48, right? This is just simply the total time divided by the number of questions. That's it. This is a simple average that's available to you. Now, you have 3 question types in verbal: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. If you have 1 minute 48 seconds, right? And what is 60? 60 is 1 minute, 80 is 1 minute 20 seconds, right? Now, if you have 1 minute 48 seconds on average in verbal, my question to you is, do you feel that you should hit 1 minute 48 across the board, SC, CR, RC, no matter what the question type is? Or do you feel the need to create a little bit of additional time to handle, let's say, RC, or, I mean, just give yourself some room, breathing room when it comes to very difficult questions that you just need extra time on? That is my question to you. Do you feel that you need to create that room? Go ahead. Okay, so I see
Yeah,
Manu is. Yeah, Ankit, go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. We have to create the room because because it is all about because as you said earlier that SC is only thing we can which is testing a lot of what is the concepts. So if we improve on that, then if we can bring the time for SC, then we have a lot of margin for CR and RC, in which the it is more difficult to comprehend the language in terms as compared to SC.
Exactly. So the way I'll put it is, it's not easy. What I'm asking you to do is not easy, but it is relatively easier than CR and RC, because you know what? Every CR question. So what is the average word count of the stimulus in CR? It is 50 plus words, 50 to 80 words. Right? This is just the reading part. This, you haven't even gotten to the 5 options yet, right? So imagine this. Every CR question is like this. The longest CR questions are like 120 words, right? And again, I'm just talking about the stimulus. I'm not even talking about the 5 options, right? So in case your exam strategy needs a little bit of buffer when it comes to those situations, the easiest place to create that buffer is SC. So not easy, but relatively easier than creating it in CR and RC. Now, I think that some of you have already thought about these issues deeply. Others may not have yet thought about them. But yeah, my purpose here is just to give you a little food for thought, just to get you started on thinking along the right lines, or at least in the right direction. All right. Now, the next point is, impact of timing on accuracy. Your accuracy is most likely going to go down. With 60 to 80 seconds on average, your accuracy is probably going to go down, at least in the beginning. What we want to do is make sure that by the time we take the exam, our accuracy is reasonable with this kind of time. For this, I am going to strongly request you to start timing yourselves right from the beginning. So I get that there are two philosophies over here. One philosophy says, no, take it easy. Just give yourself as much time as possible. Just solve the questions, be comfortable. That's one way to look at it, right? And I get it. But I'm going to request you guys to make sure that you're putting yourself under that pressure right from the beginning. See, it's easier to prepare from the beginning for a hard situation than to start much later. It becomes harder to bring those skills in. So normally what I recommend is you take questions, you solve them timed, right? Make sure you solve them timed. And then without looking at the answers, solve the same questions untimed, right? So without looking at the answers, this will give you both benefits. So if you're looking for both benefits, it'll give you both benefits. You'll have as much time as you need to solve the question, and you would have already gotten that experience of putting yourself under pressure. Why do we put ourselves under pressure? Because if we're not putting ourselves under pressure during practice, we're going to come under pressure during the exam. And that's something that we would like to avoid. So you may have heard people in the army say, you sweat during peace, you'll bleed less during the war. That's kind of what we mean over here. All right. So those were some important points. Now let's come down to the mechanics of sentence correction. In sentence correction, like verbal, right? So verbal is different from quant. Quant is something that I call binary logic. Something's right or something's wrong. That's it. There's nothing in between. Verbal is all about that in between area. That's it. Verbal is not about right, wrong, 1, 0. No. Verbal is about that gray area where you have to choose the best of the 5 options presented to you. Now, how do we handle this in a reasonable manner? We handle it by looking at the reliability of whatever we're about to do. So you have an SC question in front of you and you want to remove some option on the basis of something, you better know how reliable that thing is. Is it an absolute? Absolute means, okay, one step back. There are no absolutes in verbal, in English. There are no absolutes. You can break pretty much any rule that you want. But there are some rules that are so rarely broken that it's pointless looking at the exceptions. That's what we mean by absolutes. So if you're about to start solving a question and you want to remove a couple of options on the basis of an absolute, go for it. Go for it. This is exactly what you should be doing. Okay, sorry. Quick check. Is audio still up, guys? I'm sorry. Just quick check. Okay. Sharanya, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Oh, now it's clear. Yeah, sometimes it just happens, it's the internet between Adobe and your internet provider. Sometimes mine will break off, right? So it just happens. So don't worry about it. It usually clears up. All right. Now, meaning is also important. So we've discussed absolutes, right? Meaning. So it was very good that Ankit brought this up early because meaning is important, right? And I'll again stress that because the way I have written it seems to indicate that meaning is less important than absolutes. So I have written it as absolutes and then meaning. This is not exactly accurate. Absolutes and meaning are equally important. So when you read a sentence, you need to understand what the author's probably trying to say. Now, why have I written meaning below absolutes? The reason is very simple. It is easier to make mistakes with meaning. Imagine that you're reading a piece of text, right? And you're trying to understand what that person wants to say. Sometimes you're going to take the right decision, right? And the more you practice meaning, the more likely you will be to take the right decision. But there's always a slightly greater risk when it comes to meaning. And those of you who've tried solving SE questions would agree that understanding the meaning of the sentence, then understanding what the author wants to say, and then understanding the meaning of each of the 5 options is a time consuming process. This is the main reason that I have put meaning below absolutes. Not because it's less important, it's just more time consuming. So if you can see an absolute, right, don't bother about meaning. Let me be very clear. If you can see an absolute, don't bother about meaning on the day of your exam. while you are practicing, please look for meaning so that you can practice your ability to understand the meaning in a timed manner. Right, Ujali. So its absolutes are slightly different from basic rules. So whenever people normally use the word basic rules or rules, they normally start thinking about grammar rules, right? Is that what you're thinking? If I could just have a quick perfect. And of course, you can unmute yourself also if you have any questions about what I'm saying right now. So basically, grammar has a certain meaning, it has a certain importance. But within grammar also, there are things that are reliable and things that are not so reliable. So because we are approaching everything from an exam perspective and not a theoretical perspective, we are interested in what is practically of most importance to us. And that is the reliability of whatever we're about to apply. So even within grammar rules, if something is very reliable, we'll put it in 1. But if something's not that reliable, we'll not put it in 1. We'll put it in 3 preferences. Quick check. Ojali, makes sense?
So it's basically the most like things that would like rules that would have very few exceptions or something that would be reliable most times.
Exactly.
That's correct?
Yes. So rules that would have almost no exceptions, things that we can blindly apply without having to spend time during the exam thinking about, those are absolutes. So the less thinking you have to do on the day of the exam, right, the better it is for you. Ankit's asking absolutes, SV disagreement, S structure, pronoun antecedent, singular, plural. Oh, Sharanya, I think internet connectivity. If you can hear me right now, you may want to switch to a different internet connection, possibly a mobile connection. Um, there's there's no way for me to fix it from my side. Um, yeah, use a hotspot. Yeah, use a hotspot. Right. So, Ankit, just to very quickly answer your question, yes, you're absolutely right. Some of these things are absolutes. Um, yeah, and that's how we want to learn any topic that we study. Anything that we study has to be associated with, a level of reliability. That's what we're looking at over here. Absolutes, meaning, and then preferences. Preferences refers to things that you could have, you may not have. It's not like 100% error. Something might be nice to have, something you can get along without it, but yeah, it'd be nice to have it. That's a preferences. That's a preference. All right. Now let's take a very go ahead.
Sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt.
no,
Yeah,
please.
actually, I want to ask while approaching say a very simple and very simple question of sentence correction, right? And it has say 3 options which has an absolute error. So while studying, like while solving the questions from OG and GMAT prep like that, in our studying phase, not in the untimed or time manner, say, is it shall we strategize in terms of the absolute plus meaning for like in 5 options, if we have one option which has an absolute error and it also has a meaning error, so while studying, is it we should study like that way ki, in one option all the errors first we need to identify, because in the exam we get it that if we see absolute error, then immediately that option is wrong, but from the learning perspective, if we see that sentence and we try to figure it out all the errors in that particular sentence, so we should study like that.
Yes, Ankit, that is very important. It is very important that during your practice, you try to figure out each and every error. Now, why is this important? Because during the actual exam, you will not get the same question that you practiced, right? Instead, you'll get a different question which will have a different combination of issues and problems that have been put together in that question. So, the more things you practice during your study sessions, the more likely you are to spot those errors when you see them in a different context. Agreed?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Now, let's take a quick sentence. Now, you see the sentence next to this word that's written, example. Take a second, read that sentence, please. Now, let me read it along with you. With the stadium empty, the home team's batters will not have their usual advantage. Now, unmute your mic when you're ready and tell me. The sentence is wrong. What's wrong with the sentence? Just one thing. You can say only one thing. What's wrong with it?
It's modifier.
The modifier is wrong?
Yeah.
Which modifier?
With the stadium empty. So it should modify because with works with as an adjectival and it's a adverbial modifier, and and it doesn't make sense for it should modify the home team's batters with the stadium empty. So the home team batters do not make sense with that.
So, with is a very tricky word in English. It has a huge number of meanings. But this particular meaning, it's meant to be read as given the situation that. So, this particular introductory modifier, you can read it like this. Given the situation that the stadium was empty, comma. Or given the situation of the stadium being empty, comma. So, in this case, the modifier is fine.
With the stadium empty, so it is working as an adverbial.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Guys, remember just one thing. You can't tell me, oh, there are two errors. Just you can only say one thing. If you can only say one thing, what is that one thing you would say is wrong about this?
Does something have to do with the tenses?
Which tense are you looking at?
The home team's batters will not. Uh, so with the stadium empty, is talking about the present situation, and the home team batters will not is talking about something in the future.
No, with the stadium empty just means it's a timeless thing. There's no tense indicated with the stadium empty. You could use it with the past tense, future tense, present tense.
So there should be an apostrophe with the teams, like the team's batters. It sounds
Yeah.
like
So Rahul is absolutely spot on. I'm surprised you guys didn't point it out. Quick check, just to draw your attention to this. There has to be an apostrophe S. Now, I'm not saying the GMAT is going to test you on something like this, but this is what I mean when I say absolute error. Once you see something like this, there is nothing that's going to save this option. Nothing. This option is impossible. The home team's batters, the batters belonging to the home team. All right, now let me get a quick check. Please write in a yes in the chat window if you agree with Rahul. Awesome. I've got 3 yeses. I hope Abhishek and Sharanya also on board with this. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out is the word batters. Did anyone feel that batters was a problem?
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, so can we have the home team batters? So the home team will be an adjective modifying the batters.
Yeah, you can. You can. That would be fine. Yes, yes. Ujali should be batsman, batspersons. Got it. Uh, Batsman and in cricket, not sure about baseball. Fair enough. Now, let me ask Ujali. Ujali, I want, so this would be for Ujali and Manu both. I want you to attach a level of reliability to what you just said. So the statement that you gave me is something should be something else. Manu says batsman in cricket, but not sure about baseball. Let's say we're talking about cricket. What is the associated reliability? Are you like dead sure about this? Or I kind of heard something like this. Maybe, maybe not. And guys, just give me 1 second. I'll just be back. Just give me 10 seconds. All right, guys, my apologies. So I feel so Sharanya's facing an error in which she can hear all of you guys, but she can't hear me. So I'm not able to correct that error. But for now, we'll move on. For now, I'd like you guys to go ahead and yeah, let's pick up where we left off. Batters, Manu and Ujali. How sure are we about this?
I've just never heard batters in my life, and I don't think I would ever use it. It doesn't make it reliable, but also it
Uh,
sounds very odd. Like, who are
Ujali, let me ask you another question. What if I say fishers?
there are there are no fishers. There are fishermen, fisherwomen.
Are you sure?
I mean, who are fishers?
No, that's my question. Are you sure, or are you
No, I'm
relying
not.
on
No,
like,
no, I'm not. It's relying on what I've heard and my experience and how my mind processes or thinks what's right and wrong, which doesn't make it reliable.
got it? So Ujali saying this, Manu is absolutely dead sure that Fishers is wrong. So let me give you the context over here. Batters is a word that I just made up for this. I mean, not made up, but I used in my own sentence, right? I've never seen it in a GMAT question. Manu, Fishers I have seen in a GMAT question.
You mean fishers equivalent to fishermen or people who fish
Yes,
and go
yes,
fishing?
yes. People who fish. Yes, people who go fishing.
Oh, okay. I mean, I haven't heard of. I haven't heard of fishers being used. Have you heard of fishermen or fisherwomen?
Right. So the funny thing is, the GMAT is going to go out of its way to not be gender biased,
Mm.
right? And one nice way you can do this is there are a few questions in which you'll see an option in which they'll talk about a general person, right? Like a general person. Let me give you an example of an actual GMAT question. That question was talking about a carver. Carver. A carver is someone who carves wood, right?
Yeah.
Now, one option said the carver can create a mask. He can create a mask, right? Another option said the carver can create a mask, right? Now, both of these are grammatically correct. But would you agree that the first one is gender bias? Manu, quick check.
I'm not sure about this.
Okay, so if you're talking about a general person and you use he for that,
No, of
right, you're
course it's gender
assuming that,
biased. I
right,
mean,
because,
the pronoun can be anything, so it's
It
of
could
course
be an
gender.
assumption that it's a he or him.
right. But when you're talking about a person generally, you don't want to assume that it's a he or him, right?
Right.
Got it. So that first one was wrong. This is an actual GMAT question. And I mean, the reason it was removed was something else. Don't get me wrong. He is grammatically correct. But the point I'm trying to make is that GMAT makes an effort to avoid gender bias. And that's why you come up with words like fishers. Do you see?
Got it.
Right? So the bottom line over here is sometimes when we rely on, let's say, sound, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't rely on sound. I'm just saying, unless you're like absolutely sure, right? You've studied it, you've come across it, you know that it's used in a particular way, just be a little careful of being over reliant on sound. All right.
Is the word fishers used more in the American language context, or?
Not particularly. Whenever I ask American students about fishers, they're also like, nah, shouldn't we just say fishermen? So it's not, I don't think it's something to do with Indians or Americans. I don't think that. I think it's just the fishers is a very, very, very rare word. But that doesn't change the fact that it was used in that question. And as I said, the reason they probably use it is to avoid bias. They don't want to say fishermen, right? So that's probably what their reasoning is. All right. So let's put all of this together. Whenever we study something, we need to study it, concepts, but along with that, we also need to have an associated level of reliability. This is important for us. The next point is there are relatively few absolutes. We don't want to go around looking at every rule and saying, yeah, that's an absolute, that's an absolute, that's an absolute, and this is an absolute. No, we want to be very selective when it comes to absolutes. So relatively few things that are absolutes. And the next point is very important. Never start with preferences. Some of you may have come across things like passive voice, active voice, awkwardness, redundancy, wordiness. We'll study all these things later in our class on preferences. But preferences literally means that, yeah, it could be correct, but it's not nice to have. Now, unless you're in a situation where you don't have level 1, that is absolutes, or level 2, which is meaning. So if you don't have absolutes and meaning calls, go ahead. But unless you're in that kind of situation, don't drop down to preferences. So that's what this point is trying to say. Don't start with preferences. And the final point is context, context, context. Verbal is all about context. So just to help you see this, imagine that I gave you a quant question, right? What is 2 plus 2? One option said 4. Another option said 2 square. Another option said, let's say, 6 minus 2. Right? Do you think you will ever see a quant question like this? Okay, Manu and Ankit are saying no. Others may be thinking about it. Let me reassure you. I don't want to put the wrong thought in your mind. The answer is no. You will never see a quant question like this because there has to be only one answer. No matter how you express it, there can be only one answer in quant. In verbal, however, you can have different ways of expressing something, and some of them are better than others. So sometimes a student says, hey, we removed an option because that was passive. And in this question, we are marking an option that uses the passive voice, right? This is where you guys need to pay attention to context. Context means don't evaluate an option in isolation. You must evaluate it in the context of the other 4 options. Always in verbal. You can never forget this. In verbal, it has to be done. You can't take a look at something and say that, no, that's always how it'll work. No, it works that way in the context of that particular question. All right, now we're ready to get started with a few practice questions. Now, the first thing we'll discuss is agreement. Now, as Ankit pointed out a while back, agreement refers to subject-verb agreement and pronoun agreement. Now, don't worry about these terms, subject, verb, pronoun. Immediately from tomorrow, we'll start covering all these things, right? But in case you have something called a subject and verb, right? Like he, and then you try to say says, right? You know that it should be he says, they say, I say, right? So you need to make the subject and verb agree with each other. Similarly, if a pronoun is trying to refer to a noun, right, there should be no singular plural mismatch. You can't say student, student, and then use the pronoun they, right? This is not possible on the exam, on a standardized exam. In your real life, you may do this. In fact, I also do this, right? Especially when you don't know the gender of the person, right? You can use they in normal conversation. But on the GMAT, do not use a pronoun whose number is different from the noun that it's referring to. This is a hard level 1 absolute error. All right. Now, let's try a question on this. All right, quick check. Is everyone able to see the question? Just give me a, got a yes, another yes, perfect. Now, you have up to 3 minutes to solve it. Starting now. Please go ahead. All right. So that's 3 minutes, and I think everyone is done. And okay, there are some answers also in the chat. Okay. So, guys, generally speaking, hold on to your answers. Once we're done with the 3 minute solving time, then let's put our answers up. Otherwise, other people will get distracted. Okay. So, now it's the important portion. Okay. Who wants to start off on this? The first split. And remember, your first split ideally should be the most reliable split that you were able to spot. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready, anyone can unmute.
Hello.
Yeah, Ankit, just give me 1 second. Sharanya, I see your back. If you can hear me, just try unmuting your mic. So activate your mic if you can hear me. Okay, I think she's still facing issues. Ankit, please go ahead.
Yeah, in this particular sentence, the subject is the music and it is singular, and the verb should be singular, it should be reimagines. So that
Okay.
is the first split we have, and that eliminates option A, B. And we are
Manu,
left.
Manu and Rahul, what would you say to that?
So uh, uh, I didn't take the subject to be music here.
What did you take the subject to be?
So I took it according to the doers because the Kim K and the other one is reimagining the work of Dimitri. So that's why I said it should be reimagined.
I like the way you called her Kim K. Um, just in case anyone is wondering, this is not that Kim that you might be thinking about. This is a
So
different
that's my
Kim.
way of shortening my.
But yeah, let's come back to Rahul's point. Rahul, if we say X and Y, right?
Yes,
We would say X and Y are doing something, right?
yes,
But if we say the music of X and Y, should we say the music of X and Y are doing something or the music of X and Y is doing something to me?
is.
Is, right? So back in this question, my question to you will be, did you hyper focus on the options? Did you go back to the non-underlined part?
Uh, the option I eliminate the option A right away
No,
because
no. So my question is, when you were solving the question, did you hyper focus on the 5 options, which means you paid attention to only the options, or did you pay attention to the non-underlined portion as well?
I paid attention only to the options because the non-underlined part was too less.
So that's risky. Remember, they can leave clues for us in the non-underlined portion.
Yes,
So over here, as you pointed out, the music of X and Y is doing something, right? So music is singular. Therefore, we should go with reimagines.
okay.
Quick check. Manu, I think Rahul agrees. Manu agreed or not sure?
Yes, I agree.
Perfect. All right. Who wants to take the next split? Sharanya, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible now.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. I see that there's a little bit of hesitation taking the next split. Let me highlight it so that you have
I
a
can
stop.
I can I can
Yeah,
take
man.
it. I think it's the difference in workings and works of uh, Dmitry Shostakovich.
Good. Now, have you heard the word workings before?
Uh, no, not really.
Have you heard the word works before?
Works, yeah.
Good. What does works mean?
I think it's a plural for work, which probably an artist could have done.
Absolutely, that's it. So works just means the stuff they've produced, the works of art, right? That's when you say works of art. It's the same works. That's correct. So you need to know only one of those things. Either you know workings or music, sorry, or works, or both, right? So you need to know only one of them. Which one are you going for?
Going for works.
That is absolutely correct. Quick check. In case you're not sure about this, or you just want to know, workings means the functioning of something. So if somebody says, can you explain the workings of this, let's say, mobile phone to me, the workings of the phone, right? The workings of the phone means the functioning of the phone. Another way to use this is to say, like in math, right? Show me your workings. Show me your workings just means show me your rough work, like your steps. All right. Is workings more like a way of working? No, workings
Yeah,
is
no,
not a
I
way.
read this
Mhm.
before you explained the meaning. That's
Oh,
fine. I
got it.
read this
Got it.
before. I have one more question.
Mhm.
Um, does the part in C where it says together with have
Mhm.
any bearing also on the options? Like I thought that together with was more like a nice to have, but
Mhm.
it's not necessary. We can use and hence D works as an option. Or
But
did it not?
All right. What do you guys think? I think
hello.
Ajali asked a good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. We have to give equal weightage to Kim, and the and would be the apt word because together with, I think the main focus is on Kim. If we go with together with, the main focus is on Prim. The primary is Kim, and the secondary is that Lera. But the music of both have the equal weightage, so the and will work apt with it.
Got it.
Right. So the music of Kim together with Lera reimagines something, right? Now, once you've spotted this, right, then okay, are we giving the same weight to both of them or not? Once you've spotted it, right, hold on to it. The bottom lining of the question must be that there was something else which was more important. In this case, it was a meaning call built around workings. And that was what you used to remove option C. So if you see the music of X together with Y, right? Now, there are different issues that this introduces, not just the ones you guys have pointed out. It gets complicated very fast. But if you see workings there, you prioritize workings and use that to take the call. This is how you study. So you spot all the different things you can, right? But you also don't keep them at the same level. You ask yourself, which one would I go with if I had to do this on the exam? All right, good. So the bottom line over there would be together with, not 100% wrong, right? It creates different meanings, sure. But are we sure that those other meanings are wrong? Probably not. Are we sure that workings is wrong? Yes. All right, final point. If you see option, yeah, go ahead.
So one question, sir.
Mhm.
The difference between the option C and D, we have. I got the meaning difference between verbs and this thing, but can we have that reimagines Dimitri's working? So it is a possessive and reimagines working. So the it is somewhat restrictive, and other way around in the option D we have reimagines works of Dimitri Shoshkin.
So the interesting thing is, both of these are different ways of forming the possessive. So if you look at this apostrophe S, right?
Yeah.
This is what we normally call a possessive, right?
Yes.
This thing, the X off, right? This off structure is
Hmm.
also a way of forming the possessive.
So we can say reimagines works Dmitry Shostakovich. Would that be correct?
The works of Dmitry Shostakovich, yes. Or you could say reimagines Dmitry Shostakovich's works. Both would be absolutely fine. Now,
Okay.
when we say Dmitry Shostakovich's workings, it is the same as saying the workings of Dmitry Shostakovich. Right? Let me give you another example. If I say Kim Kashkashian's music, would you agree that's the same thing as saying the music of Kim Kashkashian?
Yeah.
Right. So those are just different ways of forming the possessive. All right. Abhishek, you had a question?
Yes, sir. We should not eliminate any option. Uh, Sometimes, sir, I have seen in some explanations they
Mhm.
prefer like the works of Dimitri rather than Dimitri's works.
That's a very good point. It comes down to idiom. Idiom means the way something is normally said in English, right? So there are some things that are normally put in a particular form, they're not put in the other form,
Okay.
right? So that is on a case by case basis. But yeah, good point. All right. Oh, so we're done with this particular question. But one last thing. In option E, reimagining that you see over there, right? I just want you to remember one thing. Anytime you see an ing, right? That ing can never be a full verb. It can never be a verb. At max, it can be part of a verb. Now, obviously, this is some effort we'll have to put in starting from the next class, recognizing these kinds of things. But this is a very easy point to remember. Whenever you see an ing, the ing on its own can never be a complete verb. What does that mean for us? Option E is not complete. It's not a complete sentence because it does not have a verb. Reimagines is a complete verb. You can pair it with a subject and you can say X reimagines Y. Sounds good. X reimagining Y? You're like, no, something after it, right? No, you can't just stop there. So that's the point we're making over here. Reimagining ing on its own is not sufficient to support a subject. Quick check. Everyone's comfortable with this? Just let me have a yes or a no. A couple of yeses.
But if it's X is reimagining Y, then what is the verb?
Then, yeah, then is reimagining would be the verb, the whole thing, but
Okay.
not reimagining on its own.
Okay.
Good question. Awesome. So we've got a yes from everyone, I think. Rahul, yes. Are we comfortable with this question?
Yes, so I was about to ask Ujali's question only. She asked, so,
Got
yeah.
it. Got it. Excellent. All right. Now, let's go back to the next point and then we'll move to the next question. So the next point is structure. Now, structure is, let's say, fundamentally important. Two reasons. So one is that sometimes you mess up with the structure. Now, what is the structure? The structure refers to how the sentence has been constructed, how it has been put together. Now, obviously, if you mess up on the structure of the sentence, right, sometimes you'll end up with errors that are so obvious that you don't even have to think about them. Like, if you take the sentence, the first year students asserted that the administration had made policy serious mistakes. The first example over there. This is, let's say, a very not well understood thing in English that you have to rely on your ear for. You literally, it's very hard to memorize a rule regarding something like this. But let's be very clear. What is the error? The error is the order of words. Right? Yeah, policy serious. Exactly. It's the order of words. Now, it's very hard to learn something like this. People are not normally taught the order in which to put words. It's something that we pick up. But if you see something like this, usually it's very easy to spot. But my point is slightly different. Structure is important for another reason, not just that sometimes it leads to massive mistakes. Structure is also important because it's, let's say, fundamental in the sense that if you are good at structure, right, whether through practice or through your natural, let's say, ability built up through years of reading, if you are good at structure, you will be able to spot other errors. That is the main thing that I want to leave you guys with. This is also the reason that our immediate focus after this introductory class will be structure. So when we start with theory, we will pull back on the number of questions. We will spend time talking about structure instead. So how do you figure out what's a subject? How do you figure out what's a verb? When are they connected to each other? What are the different types of elements within a sentence? Right now, this structure, once you've got this, the advantage is that you will no longer be looking at your sentences as blocks of text. So imagine how you look at your sentence correction questions right now. You're probably looking at them as like a huge block of text. Once you're good at structure, you'll be looking at them as small elements connected to each other. Once you can see these small elements, like once you can see your question as a set of small elements, it becomes easier to read it, to understand it, to find errors, because you're now dealing with less information at any one point of time. You can isolate certain sections of the question. And that's what makes it so useful. All right. Now, that's okay. So structure is going to be a lot of detail. We'll do it in the next session itself. For now, let's move on to the next word over here. The next word is diction, or the next topic for us is diction. Take a look at the sentence, the second example that you see over there. Now, let me read it along with you guys. The first year students asserted that the administration had made many seriously mistakes. Now, can anyone tell me what type of word seriously is? Okay, so we've got the categorization and we've got the correct version. Perfect. So seriously is something called an adverb, right? Now, what we need over there is an adjective. Why do we need an adjective? Because mistakes is a noun. And nouns can be described by adjectives. They can't be described by adverbs. Now, there are two ways to approach this. Either you do it by sound, right? You know that seriously is wrong and you know that serious is right. That's absolutely valid. I have nothing against that. Or you do it by recognizing, oh, seriously is an adverb. Now, when does this become important for us? As I said, in this sort of situation, either approach is absolutely fine. When does it become useful to actually go full on adverb, adjective, noun? It becomes useful in cases when the meaning is not that clear. Or when the words are separated, or it's hard to recognize that something is acting as an adjective or an adverb. That's when it becomes useful to start analyzing this. So again, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, should I just solve it by sound? The answer could be absolutely yes, you can. All right. Now the next one is idiom. Idiom is so many people, have issues with idiom. Now, let me ask you guys something, and this is, again, different opinions are possible on this, right? Let me ask you something. Do you think idioms are important on the GMAT? Go ahead, whenever you're ready. Unmute yourself. You don't have to typing. I'm saying this as a person who's very slow at typing, right? I can barely type. So, yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
some idioms actually are very important and they are very frequently tested, like both X and Y and these type of idioms. But that not only but also these type of idioms I think we should know. But there are a lot of long list of idioms, so it is not possible to, because in sentence correction we will not get an option which has only one error. Many errors will be there. So idioms is a very challenging topic. We have in English language a lot of idioms are there, but I think it is not good to memorize all those because it is not possible. Also, we can get it along with the practice, but given the time and given the thing, I think it is not prudent to invest so much time in idioms.
Right. So I agree with a lot of what you said, but one small point I'll ask you to just maybe think about. Everything else was spot on, but remember you said a GMAT option will not have only one error.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will. Sometimes it will have only one error. That is, sometimes there will be only one way to take an option out. The most
Yeah.
common time. Hmm,
Sorry to interrupt, sir.
go
Actually, in
ahead.
the I was stuck in one or two options in which the everything was same, and I think it at last put us an idiom call. I think one or two
Hmm.
questions were there.
Exactly. So, idioms can be a little frustrating, but first, let's quickly discuss what idioms are. Idiom, when you say something is idiomatic, right? What you mean is this is the way it is said in English. And in many cases, in fact, I don't know if I should say most, but definitely in many, there is no logic behind it. See, one of the advantages of English is it is much easier to learn than other languages, right? Like if you try learning Sanskrit, you're in for a huge shock at the beginning, right? English is much easier to pick up, and that's why it's become so successful around the world. I mean, partly why it's become successful around. It's very easy to pick up. But the reason it's easy to pick up is you don't have a very massively structured language in front of you. You don't have something which is literally driven by rules every time. So, what does that mean for us? There are going to be cases in which there are going to be things that have nothing to do with rules. It is just the way it is, and that's how we need to remember it. That's idiom. Now, the rest of what Ankit said is very important. There are some idioms that are commonly tested on the GMAT. We must study them. We will study them. We must study them. We must know them, right? You can never say that idiom will be completely eliminated from the GMAT. And the reason I'm taking a minute out to discuss this is you will find people online in companies telling you that the idiom as a topic has been eliminated from the GMAT. This is not true. Idioms are still there. They're not going to be eliminated. As long as you have English, you will have idiom. So let's keep this in mind that we will be tested on things that we cannot reason our way through. Sometimes we just have to know them, like by heart. And frustrating, but that's the way it is, unfortunately. Now, one last thing before we take a question on idiom. Please remember, there's a very big difference between unfamiliar and wrong. So it comes back to that discussion we were having about batters. If we look at something and we're like, I really don't know much about this, but it sounds weird, the immediate association with that should not be that it's wrong. The immediate association with that should be, I am not sure. Now, this is a very important point for me. I want you guys to be dead sure about this. When you're not sure about something, you should not eliminate that option. See, not sure means not sure. Not sure does not mean wrong. Please let me have a yes in the chat window or using your microphone, because this is very important. Okay, I've got 4, 5, 6. Perfect. Yes, please remember, this is very important for the verbal section as a whole. All right, practice question coming up. Now, once this question is on the screen, just hold your answers. Once everyone's solved it, then we will take a look at what we marked. Please start. You can type in done when you're done. So if I see 6 dones, I'll stop it before 3 minutes. But yeah, don't put the answers. All right, so that's less than 2 minutes. Everyone's done. And there's barely 1 minute, 40 seconds. All right. Now, would you like to put your answers up before one of you agrees or volunteers to take the first split? We have 3 people going for C. 4. Okay, good, good. C is the correct answer. Who would like to start with this?
Can I start?
Of course, please.
Yeah, actually, the first is an absolute that idiom is between X and Y. So B and E are eliminated. And
Good.
next we have left with A, C, D. And it is actually a matter of fact that no matter how much employees who commute, so it will be much, it will not be many, because we are talking about the degree of the, what we say,
Right.
that how many employees. So the
And
degree,
if I may ask you, is that a level 1, level 2, or level 3 call?
it is a level 2 call actually.
Perfect, which means it's a meaning call, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let's summarize this. He's absolutely right. The first split is an idiom split between X and Y. If you have 2 things with between, it's got to be an and. It cannot be an or a to or anything else. It has to be between X and Y. Anyone who's not sure about this, please let me know. Unmute yourselves, ask me the question, but this is one of those things that we otherwise just have to memorize. Now, the next point is equally important. Remember, just because we're saying it's level 2 meaning does not mean it's not as important as level 1 absolutes. It is important, right? Level 2 just means it takes more time. In this sentence, are they talking about the number of employees or the amount of money that these employees spend? No matter how much they spend, not no matter how many employees spend, number of employees doesn't matter. The amount matters. Perfect. So we take a meaning call and we remove 2 options over here and we're left with option C. Perfect. Now, good that we were talking about meaning. So just take a second to read this quote. There is a quote in front of you. Just take a second to read it. Let me also read it along with you. In recent years, GMAT item writers have been concentrating on the reasoning aspects rather than the purely grammatical aspects of sentence correction skills. As always, test takers need to carefully read the prompt in order to choose the answer that produces the most effective sentence. This means that while 2 sentences may both be grammatically appropriate, the correct answer is the sentence that is most effective, the sentence that better expresses the idea. The guy who wrote this was the chief psychometrician at the GMAT. He's basically the guy who calls all the shots when it comes to the GMAT algorithm, when it comes to deciding what instructions to give to the people who write the questions. Basically the guy responsible. Now, this is something he wrote in 2011, long back, right? And he was talking about questions from 2005 and 2006, right? So when he says in recent years, he actually meant starting from 2005, 2006. Now, this quote has been misused and abused by test prep companies massively. So some companies said, oh, look, the GMAT is testing only meaning now, it's not testing idioms. Idioms were a separate part of this same post that he had written. That was wrong. Idioms were still very much a thing. Other companies latched onto this and said the GMAT is only testing meaning. It's now a meaning-based exam. That was also wrong, right? And somehow they keep saying this. Like every year they keep saying this. The GMAT is becoming more and more focused on meaning. The only source of information they have is this post from 2011. That's it. And remember, the post from 2011 is talking about questions starting from 2005. So keep in mind, the GMAT has not suddenly become a meaning-based exam. The focus on meaning was brought in from 2005. Remember that. So don't suddenly change anything in your approach because you think, oh no, the GMAT has just changed. The GMAT has not changed. The GMAT has been the same for the last 15, 16, 17 years. So meaning important doesn't mean idioms are out, doesn't mean that the only thing being tested is meaning. I have heard instructors say on GMAT Club that there always has to be a meaning approach to removing an option. That's not true. The GMAT tests multiple things. All of them are important. It's not that one of them is suddenly the only thing that they're testing now. Quick check is... let's not take names over here. But I get what you're doing, but yeah. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this? Meaning, idioms. The GMAT tests everything. Everything needs to be looked at, right? Okay, I've got 3 yeses, 4 yeses. Rahul, quick check. Agree. Awesome. And Abhishek is also agreed. Perfect. Now let's do a question built around that. And of course, let me just be clear. When I say a question built around that, you might have noticed that our questions already have meaning issues. Like all the questions we've done till now had meaning issues, right? So again, let me be very clear. Just because I'm saying that meaning is not the only thing, I'm not trying to say meaning is not important. I am saying meaning is important. The only thing I'm saying is it's not the only thing now suddenly. All right. You have a question in front of you. This one is a relatively longer question. Same rules. 3 minutes. Let me know when you're done. Please start. All right, everybody, that is 3 minutes. Let's get started with the discussion. Now, would you like to put your answers up? Ah, I see. I see. Interesting. Interesting. Interesting because we're getting different answers to this. Like, it's quite spread out. So I'm seeing answers for A, C, D. Went with A, but was stuck between A and C. A and C, stuck between C and D, chose D. Got it. Okay, so what that probably means is this is a high difficulty question. Again, why am I saying probably? Because we have just started, or this is a new question, brand new question. We've never tested this before, right? My request to you is whoever volunteers to start, right? My request is start with something that you are dead sure about. Don't start with the answer. Don't tell me what the answer is. Tell me which option you can remove with 100% certainty? If you can't, that's also fine. I'll start the discussion. But if you can, now's the time to unmute your mic and let the class know.
I think I could remove D
Go ahead.
because it says could lead to increased incidence of stress, and the meaning of the question is specifically built around the astronauts chosen for their resilience.
So when you say the meaning of the question is built around that, do you mean that's what option A says?
Yeah.
So when we decide the meaning, it's got to be independently of option A. I mean, option A may be right, may be wrong. I mean, see, later on when we start solving official questions, right, you'll notice that in some of them, option A has been removed. And why has it been removed? Because it has no meaning. So I fully get that there are a lot of people who say that option A always has the right meaning. But once you guys start solving enough questions, you'll notice that many times you'll remove option A because it has the wrong meaning. So there's nothing set like that, right? So evaluate it again, but this time ask yourself, what are they probably trying to say? Of course, if you are pursuing a meaning call. If you're doing something else, that's also fine. All right. Any other volunteers? Any other entry points? Yeah, go ahead, Abhishek.
Sir, I can eliminate option C because
How?
the relative clause who is relates to astronauts, but it is far away.
Okay.
And
So,
sir, I will eliminate.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. And sir, I will eliminate option D because stress among the successful more than so yeah, sir. I will eliminate option D because the phrase chosen specifically for the resilience is misplaced. It should be near to the astronauts.
Right.
It is not the space station which is chosen. The astronauts are chosen.
Got it. First, let's make sure everyone can see these issues. So, I've highlighted this last bit. Abhishek, just you'll have to mute your mic. The echo. Yeah. All right. So the point that Abhishek's brought up is that this is called a modifier, chosen. Right. This is very close to the International Space Station in option D. Now, is this an absolute error? No, this is a clarity issue. What we would say is this is ambiguous. This is not clear. It sounds as if it's saying that the International Space Station was chosen for the resilience. So that's one issue that we can spot. That's option D. Option E says stress-related disorders aboard the International Space Station. Similar type of error, but suddenly stronger. Why am I saying stronger? Because in E, it really seems like the disorder aboard the space station. In option D for Delta, at least there's some way of saying, yeah, because of the word there, or at least from common sense, you could say that's referring to astronauts. So there's some leeway. But in option E, it really seems like it's saying the disorders are aboard the space station. Quick check. Are we able to see? I'm not saying you have to remove these options. I'm saying, are you able to see these issues?
Yes, sir. Sir, in option D, sir, the astronauts currently on board the International Space Station. If we think of this as an modifying astronauts, so I think the astronauts is the chosen is not an issue. It is far away, but I think that is not an issue. That is one of the
Right. So the way you should think about is not that it's not an issue, but that it's not a level 1 issue.
yeah. It is not an absolute issue. It is a meaning call, little bit meaning call.
Meaning clarity. Yeah, meaning
Yeah.
clarity. All right. Absolutely agreed. Okay, I see a few yeses over there. Okay. I actually want to come back to the point that Sharanya started with. That's the main thing that I want to discuss in this question. I want you guys to think about that point. What these psychologists are saying, right? Do you want that thing? What are they saying? They are saying that they will have an increased incidence of stress-related disorders. And who will have it? That's what we need to decide. What Sharanya said is some options seem to be saying that this will be limited to specific types of astronauts. That's what she said, option A said. And then she wanted to maintain that meaning. That's where I stopped her, asked her to reconsider. But that's the point I want all of us to think about. Are we saying that whatever the psychologists are saying will apply to specific astronauts? Or should it apply to all astronauts? That's what I want you to think about. And once you are sure, Manu, that's also well spotted. It also
Should
comes to
apply
the
to
same
all.
point.
Yes,
Yeah.
specific.
Ankit, please go ahead.
I think it should apply to all astronauts
Okay, why?
because in general he's talking about that could lead an increase in incidence of stress-related disorders that they're not uh, that specific astronauts which are highly trained like astronauts are highly trained individuals, but
Mhm.
that is talking in general, I think so. Not very specific astronauts are there. Like astronaut is
Everything everything you have told me is correct. I just want to ask you
But
one thing.
all,
Just give me 1 second.
yeah,
1 second, Shania. So only one thing I want to ask you, Ankit.
uh,
Everything you said was correct, but then why did you say I think so? So my question is, do you think or are you sure?
I'm not very sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I won't push you on that, but I will tell you that everything else you said was absolutely spot on. Now we want to be sure about it, right? Sharanya, I'll just come to you. Abhishek had unmuted his mic for a second. So Abhishek, please go ahead.
So I think it is related to the specific 6 astronauts.
Okay, you think it's related to specific astronauts? Why do you think so?
Because sir, it is mentioned 6 trained astronauts. So
Ah, good. So you're looking at the right place. Manu had also spotted the same thing. So I'll try to get Manu also on this. But Manu, just before that, Sharanya had unmuted her mic. Sharanya, if you could go ahead.
I was gonna get to the same point that Ankit mentioned, that it clearly mentions
Mhm.
6 highly trained astronauts.
Okay. I think now we're building up to what Manu pointed out about the usage of the. Uh, Manu, do you think you would like to expand on that or not sure?
I think we're referring to those 6 specific astronauts because if you look at the meaning of the sentence, they're talking about resupplying of those astronauts, right? So if they're not resupplied, then they could face
Mhm.
higher incidence of stress-related disorders. So only those 6 specific. I mean, that's where the number 6 comes from. Those.
I know. Now I got it, sir. I think so.
Hold on, hold
Yeah,
on.
sorry.
Let Manu finish and then we'll come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Manu.
So I went with the meaning first, and then I went on the specific 6. So some of the options don't have the word the, some of them have the word the. So they're talking about resupplying missions for those specific 6 astronauts who were highly trained for the mission. So that's why I chose D. I'm not sure if that.
Hmm. So what you said, the first half, the specific part, that is correct. But the inference you drew from it, that's wrong. We'll come to that. Come back to that. Ankit, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't. I don't think so, but I'm sure that there is a clue chosen specifically. So with that thing, we gives us a clue that we are talking specifically that about that 6 astronauts.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
not talking about general astronauts. We are talking about that 6 highly trained astronauts.
Okay. So now we've got all the information. Everyone has chimed in. Everyone said the right things. Now we need to make sure that we take the right call. So let me summarize what I've heard from you guys. So starting with Sharanya, we heard that there could be 6 particular astronauts, right? So let's write that down. specific 6 astronauts, right? And that's one meaning that some of these options are coming out. I'm not saying that some of you chose this or some of you did not choose this. I'm just saying this is one meaning that some of the options are giving us. Other options are talking about in a more general sense, not specific. Now comes the final point. Which one do we choose? Specific or general? It's a meaning call. You guys have identified the different meanings, but that's not enough. You've done only half of it. Now you need to take the correct call. This is what makes meaning challenging. Yeah, I see 3 answers for specific. The rest of you are thinking, which is fine. Meaning calls take time. All right, all 6 for specific. Got it. Guys, the answer is general. Let's talk about why. First of all, again, just to repeat, the meanings that you brought out were correct, but now we need to take the correct call. Let's see what information we have. Now, psychologists are saying something, right? All of us know that. Psychologists are saying something. Now, what are they saying? They are saying that there are delays in resupply missions. So maybe things are not reaching the International Space Station. And they are saying further delays. So if you keep doing this, right? If you keep doing this, you're going to have some sort of effect, right? Now the point is, who is that effect going to be on? Is the effect going to be on all the 6 astronauts aboard the International Space Station, or is it going to be on specific astronauts aboard the space station? And let's be clear about this. If we say specific, then why would we expect the effect to be on those astronauts who have resilience? Why would the psychologists be worried about those astronauts who have resilience? They should actually be worried about astronauts who don't have resilience. Why should we say out of all the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, only a smaller set will be affected? And that too, only the set that is resilient. Do you see the contradiction? Okay, I've got only 2 yeses for this. Okay, let me explain this in a different way. If I say I spoke with 6 students in the class. I'm not sure if you're able to see my writing, but I hope you can see it. I spoke with 6 students in the class versus I spoke with the 6 students in the class. How are these 2 sentences different from each other? I spoke with 6 students in the class. I spoke with the 6 students in the class.
Yeah, in the first one, I think so. The 6 can be anybody in the class, and in the next, the 6 students, those students they are specific students that we are catching the subset from the class. Those are specific,
The
and the
first
first
part
is
is correct.
they
First
can
part
be
is correct.
anybody.
But the second part is what Manu is saying, that the class has only 6 people in the second one.
Yes,
So the first part is what Ankit said. I spoke with 6 students in the class means the class might have any number of people. I have no idea what n is. But I spoke with 6 out of whatever the n number of people in the class, right? So some group of 6 people. I have no idea about the total number. I have no idea about anything else. Some group of 6. But when I say I spoke with the 6 students in the class, right? It means the total number of students is 6 and I spoke with all of them. Okay, Manu's saying got it. The others are not that sure. Fair enough. Okay, let me give you another sentence. I solved the 36 questions in the verbal section versus I solved 36 questions in the verbal section. Again, let me repeat. I solved 36 questions in the verbal section. I solved the 36 questions in the verbal section. The 36 means it is the total. You solved all of them. You did not specify some subset. Okay, I see a couple of people saying, got it, perfect, yes. So yes, the means all of them, right? Now, let's highlight that. So psychologists contend that further delays in resupply. So correct answer here is B for Bravo. Let's read it. Further delays in resupply missions could lead to an increased incidence of stress-related disorders among the 6 astronauts. And now we have something called a non-restrictive modifier. A non-restrictive modifier, which some people call non-essential, means you are giving information about the entire set. You are not trying to describe some smaller set. You are saying everyone has this quality. You can read this as brackets open and brackets closed. These two dashes, whenever you see a pair of dashes, you can read that as brackets open and brackets closed. So, increased incidence of stress-related disorders among the 6 astronauts currently aboard the International Space Station. So all the 6 astronauts, this is how you should read it, could cause these incidents among all the 6 astronauts. And who are astronauts? Highly trained individuals chosen specifically for their resilience. This is a general description of the term astronauts, the 6 astronauts. So who are all the 6 astronauts? They are all highly trained individuals specifically chosen for their resilience. Now, if we go for something like option A says that the disorders will be among 6 highly trained astronauts chosen specifically for their resilience. It means we're not talking about the others, but we're saying only those 6 who were chosen for their resilience will be affected. Right? Now, this is weird because, first of all, you would expect the disorders to affect all the astronauts. Secondly, you would not, even if somebody is affected, you would not expect the resilient ones to be affected. You would expect the non-resilient ones. And finally, we would expect all astronauts to generally be resilient. We would not expect some astronauts to be chosen for resilience and other ones not to have resilience. We would expect all of them to be highly trained, all of them to be resilient. All these 3 things put together give us a solid meaning call to choose option B for Bravo. Now, some of these options also have a slightly different type of error. This is current, option D, 6 current astronauts. Current means, belonging to the present era. Now, this would come back to that discussion we were having about adjectives, adverbs. Without becoming too technical, what we want to say is they are currently on board. We don't want to call them current astronauts. Current astronauts would mean they are astronauts belonging to the current era. Like when you say current affairs, right? It's belonging to the present time period. We don't want to say these astronauts are belonging to the present time period. We want to say that they belong, that they are currently on board. Quick check. Are we, and of course, then the point about the versus just without the. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this one? Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. Manu, please go ahead.
So I had a question about this hyphen, which starts with after astronauts highly trained. Is this just, is this additional information about the astronauts that we can? Is it just describing the astronauts, or is it?
It's describing the astronauts in general. So whenever you see a pair of dashes, just feel free to replace them with brackets, opening brackets and closing brackets.
Okay.
So when we do punctuation, we'll discuss that dashes are basically just like stronger brackets.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. All right. Now, just a quick word to you guys again. As I said, my apologies, but we may be extending beyond 2 hours. If anybody has a hard stop, please let me know right now, but we might have to go on for another 15, 20 minutes. Hard stops, please let me know. Okay, Ojali. So I'll make sure that this recording gets to you. And of course, anything that we cover beyond this point, I'll be happy to take one-on-one as well. Awesome. All right. Have a good trip. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Now let's go back to the next concept. So when we, all right, Sharon, yeah, I'll see you later. You'll also receive the recording. Now the next point is about possible versus likely. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for attending. So possible versus likely when it comes to meaning calls. Now take a look at the sentence, this moving through the solar system. Just read it and just take a second to read it and think about the meaning of the sentence. Now let me read it with you. Moving through the solar system at speeds of over 41 kilometers per second, an amateur astronomer discovered comet Borisov, the first observed interstellar comet. Now, in these kinds of situations, right, sometimes students tell me, hey, how do I know who is moving, right, or what is moving? So some of them will say, yeah, Rahul, it's a doer error. Exactly. But you know what? Some people say, how do I know? How am I supposed to know whether the astronomer is the one who's moving or whether the comet is moving, right? So they say maybe it's possible that the comet is moving. I don't know, right? So here we have to be a little careful about traveling too far down this possible road. So many times I see people taking these, like 0.01% probability calls. 0.01%, and then they will say, oh, the possibility exists, so how can I remove this option? In SC, we need to remember that we need to go for the most likely interpretation. We never try to let these edge cases decide our interpretation of the meaning. So in this sort of a situation, we do exactly what Rahul said. We identify that there's a doer error and we remove such options. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with possible versus likely? Excellent. I think Rahul, Ankit, Manu, and Abhishek, perfect. All right. Now for the next one. So we've got just a few more discussions left. The next one is parallelism and comparison. Parallelism, technically speaking, is level 3. Okay, so it's something that is used to make your sentences sound good, something to help readers read your sentence, right? It's like a decoration. But practically speaking, in 99.9% of the cases where parallelism is tested on the GMAT, it's level 1. So for all practical purposes, we'll treat parallelism as level 1. It is possible for the GMAT to be a little creative. So I've seen them go beyond straightforward parallelism in like a handful of questions, like 3-4 questions till now, in all the questions they've released. The rest of the questions are like super straightforward parallelism, right? So bottom line, parallelism, level 1. All right, practice question. Please go ahead. All right, I see that everyone's done and in less than 2 minutes as well. Okay, do you want to confirm your answers? All right, we're going 3 for E, all for E. Perfect. Okay, so this question is not a brand new question. It's a modified version of a question that I had made quite some time back. But it is a little longer than it normally would be, but good to see that all of you got the right answer. Yes, E is the correct answer. Who would like to volunteer for the first split?
Hello.
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I don't. It tests parallelism
Mhm,
with three parts that should apply. Should
mhm,
each computer should be reliable in its operation. It should run on the same operating system, and it should generate as little heat as possible. So should applies to all three, and should as should is the auxiliary modal verb. Then
mhm.
the verb will be in the plural form. It will be generate, and that eliminates A and B and C and D as well,
Good,
because generating is not a verb at all.
good.
C and D. Yeah.
So the learning we'll take away from this question is that when you have a list of items, right, like X, comma Y, and Z, you want those items to be as similar as possible. And one way to do that is to make sure that you are or you're identifying the right list. How do you make sure you identify the right list? You start at the right place. Put a bracket after the thing that is distributed. By distributed, what we mean is everything before your bracket should be distributed over everything within the list. Let's try reading it. Each computer should be reliable. Each computer should run the same operating system. And each computer should generate. Not each computer should generating, should generating, should generates, should generates. So each computer should be reliable, should run, should generate. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this? All right. Now let's head back to the next topic. So modifiers are basically adjectives and adverbs. This is a pretty big topic. Definitely something we'll want to put a lot of work into. So let's take the second last question for that. All right, please go ahead. Okay, I see that everyone is done. Now, in this case, Let me bring up the first point. I'm sure many of you would have spotted it. When we say in firing all our key employees, after this type of modifier, and we'll discuss what we mean by this type of modifier in a later class, we need the doer, someone who makes sense with whatever action we're talking about over here. In this case, it must be the entrepreneur who fired her employees, not the mistake of the entrepreneur, right? The entrepreneur's mistake. That is not who fired. It's got to be the entrepreneur. So the good news is that 3 options go out immediately. And then it's just straightforward parallelism. She made a mistake and causing. So when we see and, it's got to join similar elements. Made is a verb, and we know that causing is an ing. INGs are never verbs on their own. So we would have liked to see verb parallelism. It would have created some meaning issues, but at least parallelism would have been respected. Right now, option C is not parallel. So we mark option E even though it is the longest, or maybe A is slightly longer, but even though it is one of the longest options over here. So even though option E is wordy, we actually feel that it's the best option out of the 5. Quick check. Please unmute yourself. Any doubts? Anyone not sure about this? All right. I think Rahul's saying that he's clear. And Abhishek is typing something. Ankit's also typing something. Clear. Clear. Awesome. All right, Manu, this is good, right? Comfortable with this one?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, verb form. Verb form is, again, a pretty big topic. The primary thing that we study under verb form is something called tenses. Now, tenses have to do with time. Something happened in the past, something is generally true, something's going to happen in the future. Most importantly, of course, the perfect tenses. So those are things that we'd study under tenses. Now, these examples over here, a long extinct species of mammoth, the woolly mammoth, roams the earth. Clearly, we would not want to use a present tense for the mammoth because the question is clarified. The mammoth is extinct. But that brings me now to the final point that we need to discuss. Pronouns. Take a look at this sentence, the ball. Hang on. So there's a typo over here. It needs to be, he hit the ball out of the park. Not part, but park. He hit the ball out of the park. Once you've read it, tell me, are you comfortable with this, or do you think this sentence is wrong?
Yes, sir, it's wrong.
Okay, why?
So which is misplaced?
What problem is it creating?
So which should modify a noun?
Got it. Got it. Fair enough. Ankit, were you also saying something?
Yes, I think it should be ing because it is an action. He hit the ball out of the park, and that led to the applause from the audience. So it should be ing leading to applause from the audience, not which led to.
Fair
Because
enough.
which um, incorrectly modifies park, and it should be the action. It should be modified.
Got it. Got it. And Manu's asking cause and effect should be in ing form. Sure. Ing is one way to show cause and effect. It could be the way to communicate that idea. Now, there are 2 ways to think about this. So the first one is, let's say, sticking to the definition. The other one is a more practical approach. Now, sticking to the definition would mean a pronoun is a word that refers to a noun or replaces a noun. Different people use different words in the definition. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. So if that noun is not there, well, too bad. That's wrong. Right? That's the sticking to the definition approach. The practical approach is, yeah, pronouns generally refer to nouns, but practically speaking, in English, pronouns are used to refer to clauses all the time. A clause is a subject verb combination. Like over here, this is a clause. He hit the ball out of the park. So the practical approach would be, sure, that's the definition, but this is how it's done commonly in English, using a pronoun to refer to a clause. So my question to you would be, if you don't go by the definition or whatever somebody might have told you to do, right? If you just go by the sound, does this sentence sound okay, or does it sound like, oh, terrible? Okay, Manu is saying it sounds okay. Ankit is saying it sounds okay. I see. Is clause a clause may be a complete sentence. So when we say clause, we mean independent clause. We'll study all of this in the coming sessions on structure. Fair enough. So I hear that some of you think it sounds okay, and I agree, it sounds okay. So this is the approach that we prefer in our class. So when it comes to pronouns, we prefer the practical approach. And this is because we don't want to assume things about the GMAT. So when people say a pronoun always refers to a noun, right? See, they are relying on, let's say, their own assessment of the situation. We should try to minimize that. So we should try to put as few expectations as possible on the GMAT, because the GMAT doesn't care about our expectations. It's going to make its own questions the way it makes them. So we generally tend to follow a practical approach when it comes to pronouns. So we say that it's possible for a pronoun to refer to a clause, but not preferred. That's our approach. So this, for us, would be a level 3 error, preferences error. It would not be an absolute error. And again, there are advantages and disadvantages of both these approaches. The first one, it's simpler, right? The second one, it's slightly tougher. You have to remember one more level of rules, but it is safer. So, for example, back in 2016 or something, in the 2016 official guide, they came out with a question in which the pronoun this was used to refer to a clause, right? And then suddenly, you know, nobody was able to say what was happening because they all thought pronouns cannot refer to clauses on the GMAT. But suddenly here's a GMAT question in which a pronoun is referring to a clause. What do we do? Right? That's what happens. So if we try to create our own expectations around what GMAT should do, we will come across situations in which that will be broken. Sometime or the other, it'll happen, right? So in our classes, we generally try to take the, let's say, I was about to say better approach, but I will say safer approach. Better or not is up to you. So as I said, the advantages of the first one are easier to learn, but the disadvantages are open to exploitation by the GMAT. The second one, harder to learn, but safer. So the choice is yours. In our class, I normally recommend the second one, practical approach. All right, let's take a look at preferences. Let me put a question for that up. All right, guys, last question for the day. It's fully underlined, but take your time. Let me know when you're ready. So, all right. So I've seen your comments. Any volunteers for the first split?
Hello.
Yeah, Ankit, go ahead.
Should be option D should be doer, the person who created, and that follows with the developing. So that is wrong.
Good.
And in the first option, we have an idiom error, both with spirits and fairies. So both X and Y, and an X and Y should be similar and parallel.
So
And
let's call that a parallelism error.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then in B, the obsession with spirits and also fairies. So the also is redundant. So it is a level 3 error.
Good. Yeah.
And so we are left with option E and option C. Option C also the both both of the two elements, spirits and fairies. So that is also not parallel.
Good. Good. Now, let me add a couple of things to that. So first, let's summarize Ankit's approach. Ankit said and also is redundant. Redundant means when you're using multiple words and given the presence of one of those, the other one is not necessary. So and also is an example of redundancy. Now let's attach the level 3 call also to it that Ankit attached. Basically, and also we have seen and also in correct options on the GMAT. But that's the point. Although it's not impossible, it is something we would generally not want to see. Similarly, both of the two. As soon as you say both, you don't have to include this information about two. This is also a level 3 call. There is a level 1 call. Sorry, there are two level 1 calls here. So if we take a look at the developing and both with the spirits, so as Ankit pointed out in option A, when you say both X and Y, right, you want to make sure that the X and Y are as parallel as possible. So if they had said both with spirits and with fairies, that would have been okay. Or with both spirits and fairies, that would have also been okay. But right now, this is not parallel. And finally, that big modifier error. The person who created the supremely rational consulting detective Sherlock Holmes, comma. After the comma, we need the person who created Sherlock Holmes. The developing of Arthur Conan Doyle's obsession is not the creator of Sherlock Holmes. It needs to be the author. So Arthur Conan Doyle needs to be there. This is, I think, an important point. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this? All right, a couple of yeses. I'm guessing Ankit is any perfect. Now, one last point to add over here, and that is relating to awkwardness and the passive voice. Now, what is awkwardness? Awkwardness means that you're looking at something that's not technically impossible, but it's not a good way to say it also. So I know we have discussed one level 1 error related to the developing, but separately, without thinking about the person who created Sherlock Holmes, without thinking about that modifier, just ask yourself, if I just say the developing of Arthur Conan Doyle's obsession occurred, is that like a high quality way to phrase that sentence? Or is it something that I would avoid if I had the chance? That's what we mean by awkwardness. Awkwardness, possible, but yeah, bad. That's what awkwardness means. Passive is something different. Passive means that the subject receives the action. Conversely, active means subject performs the action. So, for example, if you say, I drove the car, I drove the car, I is the subject, I is doing the driving, right? The subject is doing the driving, that's active. If you say the car was driven by me, the subject is the car, but the car is receiving the action. It was driven, right? That is passive voice. Now, in some cases, passive is actually better than active, but generally speaking, active is preferred to passive. So, level 3 call again. An obsession was developed in his later years by by Arthur Conan Doyle. Not as good as Arthur Conan Doyle developed an obsession in his later years. Now, final point related to modifiers. Option C. Take a look at the placement of in his later years. So in option C, in his later years. Now, option C says the creator of Sherlock Holmes in his later years, right? It is not saying comma in his later years, comma Arthur Conan Doyle developed. So that first comma is not even there. There's no first comma. So it seems as if in his later years has something to do with the left-hand side. The creator of Sherlock Holmes in his later years. But actually, in his later years should be closer to developed. Because in his later years is trying to tell us when the obsession was developed. So, as Manu pointed out, in his later years should be closer to developed and not to the left-hand side of the sentence. This is a modifier placement issue. So, with a modifier, sometimes if you position it incorrectly, you'll create unintended consequences. Maybe the meaning will be wrong or the sentence will become impossible, things like that. So modifier placement is also something that we have to keep in mind. All right, so that was our final question. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this? Please feel free to unmute and ask your doubts if you have any doubts. Awesome. So I've received 3 yeses. Abhishek has also given a yes. Perfect. So we've extended by more than half an hour. I will take only 3-4 more minutes of your time. Now let's conclude. So what we've looked at today is different concepts, right? Different names given to different things within sentence correction. And our approach is, you know what? Let's be comfortable with them. It's going to cause us a little bit of pain in the short term, but in the long term, it's useful. Why is it useful? Just take an example of quant, right? In quant, if somebody tells you that, hey, look, let's not look at all these concepts and terms and all these definitions. Let's not look at all of that. You know how you will be solving questions. You'll be solving questions like this. In this circle, there is a line segment which goes from the center of the circle to a point on the circumference of the circle. Right? Every time you have to talk about the radius, you will instead be saying there is a line segment from the center of the circle to the circumference of the circle. And God help you if you don't already know what the word circumference means. Right? So once we know terms, right, what can happen over there is it makes it faster. Your subsequent learning is going to be faster because you can relate other things to that thing. And simply knowing terms and concepts helps you in the sense that as soon as you know that term, your mind will automatically remember multiple things associated with that. So every time you hear the word radius, you don't even have to consciously think of all the different ways you can see the word radius used. You may be able to see it in a calculation of the area of a circle or in the circumference of the circle. Or you'll remember that the shortest way to represent radius is just with an R. So when you start drawing your diagram to solve your question, you will not be thinking, oh, let me call it X. You just call it R and you know what it means. So you know that this is going from the center to the circumference, right? That is where concepts come in handy. So if you don't do that, what you'll be having is a very vague understanding. You'll not be able to connect other things to it. That's the first point. The second part of our conclusion is that we remember that whatever we study, right, we'll also keep in mind how reliable it is. Without that, it's not as useful, because if you start with something that's not reliable, then what's the point, right? Your approach is the opposite of what it should be. The third point is related to what we just discussed. We always prioritize absolutes and meaning. We never start with preferences. And the final point that we discussed, important point that we discussed, is that when something sounds bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. So if you're sure that it's impossible, sure, that's wrong. But if you've never studied it, if you've hardly ever heard about it, if it's just a feeling you have and you're not sure, don't take not sure as wrong. Not sure is not sure. Perfect. Okay. So thank you all for staying till it's 11:35 almost. First of all, thank you all for attending and then staying till 11:35. I hope we were able to discuss some of the important ground, we'll lay some of the groundwork for subsequent sessions. In tomorrow's session, we immediately get going with theory, structure, parts of speech, which will lead us to punctuation, parallelism, things like that. So I will see you guys at 9 o'clock sharp tomorrow. Thank you for attending, Ankit. I was just about to say that I will still be hanging around here. In case there's anything about this session or anything about your prep that you'd like to discuss, please feel free to reach out to me on the phone. But in case there's something right now that you would like to discuss about the session, anything at all, please stay back. I will be here.